know that Josh was really bright. He was a smart fellow. When he was little, put him in kindergarten in the Eastern school system. And about halfway through the year, the kindergarten teacher called me at home and said, I need to meet with you. And I thought, oh Lord. Because, well, I'll tell you the story before that. When Josh was 3 years old, he was in the back seat, and I was teaching him to read and write. As we were driving, I would pick out a road sign and tell him, spell that out, and I'll tell you what it is. So he learned stop, go, open, enter, those kind of words pretty early. So he's about 3.5 years old. He's in the back seat. He said, I want to ask you a question, Mama. And I said, what? And I thought it was going to be another road sign. He said, what is, oh, sorry, I'm having to sing a moment. What is, anyway, it's DNA. Lysergic, whatever it is. And he said the big word. And I'm like, wait. I said, what? And he said, what is lysergic something or other acid? And I pulled over, found a parking lot, and thought I would, my head would come off. I thought, where did he even hear that? And I asked him, I said, I see it on TV. I wondered what it was. So we had a conversation about DNA at 3.5 years old. And I thought, I don't know if I've got what it takes for this challenge. So anyway, moving on, put him in kindergarten. The teacher called me, said, I need to meet with you. I said, well, I'll be right now. She said, oh, no. I need to meet you off the premises. And I thought, what? And I said, what is the matter? She said, it's nothing wrong. I just need to meet with you off the grounds. And so I met her at McDonald's. She was within a few months of retiring. She was my age. And she was teaching kindergarten. And she said, I don't want to frighten you, but you need to find another school for your son. And I said, why? She said, well, when we have our reading circle, the children all sit on the floor and we read a book. Usually a simple picture book. And she said, the principal came to my room one day, and Josh was the one reading the book to the other children. And he was 5.5 years old. It was a simple story. It was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or Three Little Pigs, or something like that. Stories that at home he could recite just by looking at the pictures. But she said, we need to find him another school. The principal said he's not allowed to read aloud in kindergarten anymore. It is going to make the other children uncomfortable. Needless to say, I came all to pieces. I found him at the school. That summer, I took him to UTC to a special education class and had him evaluated. And by then he was about 7.5. And put him in some programs. He went spelunking, caving with other older children that summer. And they tried to evaluate him, and they told me that I needed to do all I could do to get him the help he needed, because he was too bright to come to school. And that's true. Lord, we had trouble in public school. Josh, when he turned about 10, he said, Mama, please quit going to my school. was somewhere beyond 138. 150 is a genius. Well, I think he probably was one. But he was so quirky and he was so shy. Lord, when he was little, he was the oldest grandchild, the oldest great-grandchild, the only grandchild, first grandchild in my family. So everybody he was around was an adult. He never went to daycare. He was never cared for by anybody but his daddy and I, and his grandparents and his aunts and uncles. So even as a child, he talked like a grown-up. No baby talk, no foolishness, none of that. He called a penis a penis, and he called a vagina when he was 5 years old. My mother said, "Why are you teaching those words to my grandson?" And I said, "Because he don't have a Peter, and I don't have a Paul." And my mom, she bust out laughing, because that's what they called it when we were little. The Peter and the Paul. I'm not teaching my kid that kind of foolishness. So he was raised like a grown-up from the time he got into stepping panties. My husband used to tell me, "You need to have those conversations on the telephone with Josh, because I don't know what y'all are talking about." And he said, "If Josh comes over here and sits for 2 hours," he said, "I feel like I'm in outer space." He said, "Y'all talk about things that I don't care nothing about, don't know nothing about, and don't want to learn about." But that's the way it was for Josh. He would get on some kind of tirade about something or another, morals or politics or ethics, those kind of things, that he would just go on and on and on with it. Sometimes I would kind of get brain with him, listening to him, because he could sure talk. By the time he was about 4 years old, I used to have to tell him, "Hush, please hush, my brain is spinning. You chatter too much, you ramble too much." But he's been that way his whole life. Those of you that spend a lot of time with him will testify, I'm sure, that he could go off the deep end on some topics, but part of what made me special. So, I'm struggling.
No need to apologize.